The Planning Commission will first take action on the consent agenda. Following the action on the consent agenda, the Planning Commission will continue with the regular agenda items. As a courtesy, once again, make sure your cell phones are turned off. Any action taken on a conditional use permit request will take effect 5 working days following this meeting unless a written appeal of the Planning Commission's decision is filed in the Planning Office by July 31st at 5 p.m. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the County Commission for a hearing on August 15th on or after 9 a.m. And those meetings are held right here in this room. Any final action taken on rezoning applications tonight, okay, will be referred to the County Commission. I don't know why we got double there too. It's going to refer to the August 22nd meeting after 9.
One's for the rezoning and one's if they appeal the conditional use permit.
Yeah, the appeals will be here as well, okay. At this time, the Planning Commission will consider the consent agenda. The minutes for the June 26th meeting are included as part of the consent agenda. Are there any objections from the Planning Commission members on any item listed on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to refer item 8 to the regular agenda.
Okay. Any other action? If not, then we will read the consent agenda with the exception of item 8. Do we need a motion to approve the consent agenda without item 8?
We have to go through that. You have to go through them all and see if there's any.
We have to do that. Okay, so now we'll read each item on the consent agenda. So did anyone object to it, one of these items, please raise your hand and it will be moved to the regular agenda. Item number 1 was approval of the minutes from the June 26th meeting. Item number 2 is a conditional use permit number 1744 to exceed 1,200 square feet of accessory building requesting 5,012. This is Eric Nicolai is the petitioner, located at 426 253rd Street, approximately a half mile west of Garrettson. This would allow a 5,012 total square foot of accessory building. Conditional use permit number 1745, transfer 1 building eligibility. The petitioner is Jason Williamson. This is located approximately 3 miles south of Garrettson, and this would allow the transfer of 1 building eligibility. Okay, item number 4. Conditional use permit 1746 to exceed 1,200 square feet of total accessory building requesting 3584. And this is James Holbeck is the petitioner. It's at 25515 Helen Trail, approximately 5 miles north of Sioux Falls.
You have someone that's objecting.
Okay. If we have an objection on that, number 4, then that will be moved to the regular agenda. Okay, item number 5, conditional use permit number 1747 to transfer 2 building eligibilities. Petitioner is Janelle Hansel. It's approximately 1 mile northwest of Humboldt. Okay, and this would allow the transfer of the 2 building eligibilities. Item number 6, conditional use permit 1749 to transfer 1 building eligibility. And this is Dalton Grimius, and the owner is Sandra Grimius. It's approximately 3 miles east of Sioux Falls. And this would allow the transfer of 1 building eligibility. See any objections on that? Item number 7, conditional use permit to 1750 to exceed 1,200 total square feet, requesting 2,616. This is Tyler Kane. He's also the owner. It's at 25345 477th Avenue. It's approximately 4 miles southeast of Baltic. And this would allow 2,616 total square feet of accessory building area. And so on the regular, on the consent agenda, then we have items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay. Well, motion, we had a second.
There's a hand up in the back, Mr. Chairman.
You have a question?
No question. Okay.
You have a question, sir? 4.
I have a question, and I may be way out of order, but is there a way to turn up your microphones? Because an old geezer like me's really having a hard time hearing everything.
The microphones are on, sir, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're not necessarily directed at us as well as they could be, that's for sure.
I don't know if this
So,
would make a difference, I talk like that?
yeah. Feel free to move up a row, too. The guy from church already left, so you can sit up front now.
I sit in the front row at church, so.
Okay. All right, so we have items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. And we have a motion for approval. And did I hear a second, Becky? Yes. And Becky seconded. Any other further discussion on any of the items? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's carried. So if you were items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, or 7, you are free to go. Your items have been approved. And we are talking about we have to have a motion now for the regular agenda because we added items.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve adding the 2 items. Mike, you seconded it? Someone?
I'll second it.
Okay. So a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So item number 4 is now on the regular agenda. David Heinold.
Commission, David Heinold, Planning Department. So our item number 4 is a conditional use permit request. 17-46 is to exceed 1,200 square feet of total accessory building area, and the request is 3,584 square feet. The location is just located, as you can see on the map right here, just off of 255th Street, just south on Helen Trail, all the way to the terminus. There's a cul-de-sac right here, and the property subject outlined in red is of discussion. The property, so just going through the site plan, there are 2 existing buildings on the property. There's a 16 by 24 and a 20 by 40 that are located right near the southern property boundary. And the proposed 40 by 60 building would be located between where the house is being constructed right now and those 2 existing sheds, so right in the middle. And then the driveway is like right here, right off the cul-de-sac circle. Going through just some of the accessory building sizes in the area, staff goes out and analyzes based on the records that we have with building permits of the sizes buildings through equalization department. So that just going through the property at 47542 Washington Street, which is just located to the south of this property right here, is actually conducted of more than just 1 lot. It's actually 3 lots that are combined in the same owner. So it's a total of about 25 acres just split into those 3 lots. That property has 3,954 square feet total accessory building area. And comparatively, just down the street, the Planning Commission approved accessory building area 47560, which is located just to the east of that property that I just mentioned, and that was to allow 3,376 square feet, and that was a few months ago, on 8.69 acres. Forgot to mention, the subject property is 4.23 acres, so roughly half the size of those properties, that property itself. The other sizes in the area along 255th Street, there is a building that is 2,400 square feet, which is on approximately 1 acre of ground, which is located to the west of the subject northwest of the subject property. Just going through some of the conditional use permit criteria and quickly going through that. I don't want to go to that yet. The effect upon the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for other uses already permitted and upon property values in the immediate vicinity. As I've mentioned, the general area, there's buildings that range in the size from 1,200 square feet to 5,060 square feet on different size lots, as you can see on the map on the screen. And the building itself will be used for the owner's own personal storage. There's no commercial storage or business activities that are allowed on site. And then the remaining area around that is, as you can see, is primarily agricultural with those residential houses. Pretty dense area, so a lot of the building eligibilities are most, if not all, used up. in the general area. 2, that the effect upon the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. I think I mentioned the use of the building is only for personal use. Given the size of the other accessory building sizes in the area, 3,580 square feet of accessory building area would be congruent with the land composition. 3, that utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities are provided. Access to the petitioner's building is off the existing driveway, so no further infrastructure would need to be provided. The natural topography, and just skipping forward with, and this goes into condition or criteria number 5 or number 3 as well, as far as hydrology and drainage is concerned for the building. So you're looking at the property here. This is kind of on top of that hill, which I have a couple of pictures that show that. Then the property, it goes up and then it goes back down towards 255th Street, as well as there's also an area that goes straight down this way to the northwest. And then this is a low area down here. So it's the proposed accessory building will undoubtedly produce stormwater runoff, but should not significantly affect the surrounding property owners given the natural lay of the land. 4, that off-street parking and loading requirements are met as a result of the personal use and storage of the building. There's no need for additional parking on site. 5, that measures are taken to control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, and lighting, inclusive of lighted signs, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance. With this building, there may be some outdoor lighting that should be of a full cutoff and fully shielded, so it's projected downward onto the site in order to emit light from spilling off onto adjacent properties that may be in the immediate vicinity. 6, health, safety, general welfare of the public and the comprehensive plan. The proposed accessory building should have no effect on the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The use of the building is only for private use and storage. Should create few problems to surrounding property owners with the adherence to the public nuisance ordinance. The use or the subject property is located within the agricultural production area identified in the Envision 2035 comprehensive plan. This area is not identified as transition or rural service area, and is considered agricultural production area because it's likely to continue agricultural or primarily farmland, with the exception of building eligibilities in the area for single-family dwellings. This property is located outside of any growth areas for any residential or future growth. Just going through some of the pictures that I took of the site. This is looking at the 2 buildings. One is being constructed right now, one of the sheds, and then the other one that is finished. And this would be the site of the proposed request for 40 by 60, which brings the total up to 3,584. This is looking at the house, so the driveway right here, and then the house off to the right. And then, so this is looking north towards 255th Street. This is at the cul-de-sac circle, and going up, it goes up just a little bit, not a lot of rise on that. And then as you can see this picture, then it goes up quite a ways to get to that point. This is looking from 255th Street, again showing that vantage point of the hill, the slope there. And then this is looking east down 255th Street, and then looking back the opposite direction, primarily farmland. This is that low area this is looking towards the site. You can see there's a house up here. That's the subject property, and then the 2 buildings off to the side there. So that's what that low area is looking at. These are some of the buildings that are in the area, and just going through that really quickly, and just down 255th Street, there's some additional buildings and kind of hidden. So recommendation, staff finds that the requested total accessory building sizes is relatively comparable to the existing accessory buildings in the immediate vicinity. So staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 1746 with the following conditions. 1, that the accessory building square footage shall not exceed 3,584 square feet. 2, that the accessory building shall not exceed 35 feet in height. 3, that the building shall be an accessory use to the continued use of the property as a residential lot. 4, that only personal residential storage shall be allowed in the building and no commercial use or storage will be allowed at any time. 5, that all outdoor lighting shall be of a full cutoff and fully shielded, designed to keep light on site, projected downwards. 6, that a building permit is required prior to construction of the accessory building. And I'll answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for David? Okay, thank you, David. I'll have the petitioner come forward, please. State your name and address, please.
Jim Hobeck, current address is 27339 Ridgeway Road, Harrisburg.
Okay.
My wife and I flipped, I lost, I have to come up.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Holbrook?
Mr. Holbeck, you're expanding the buildings that you're got on that area there?
Yeah, it's all going up now pretty much at once. I had the other two constructed there. The builder had to pull off. He didn't finish the second one, and the first one's almost done. And I'm just looking at adding this other building, which would put me over that figure.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I guess there's no other questions for you. Okay. Anyone else in the audience care to address this? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Tony Lee, 47563 255th Street. So I reside right here.
Okay.
And so when we purchased this property in 2004, there were no housing eligibilities available. Every time we come here, they keep adding more watershed. And per your own ordinances, they actually have to, the developer is required to have not just a drainage plan for their area, but they're responsible for the additional drainage that they put onto the adjacent areas. Okay, so the topography map that you had here was actually fantastic, because then we get all of this watershed. Where did the mouse? There it is. All of this watershed through here. Now, I understand that he's asking you to build over here, but when does it end? There's a reason the ordinances were put in place for watershed, and I chuckle because, so our shed, we asked to add on to it. We have a 30 by 32 shed, and we were denied because we said it wasn't of the area. I would be the next door neighbor, and you're,
What time did you apply for that?
would have been 2008, 2009.
Okay. So that's 8 years ago.
Right, but I've been there for 13 years. And every decision you guys have made to these adjacent properties has devalued our land. We have flooded twice. Okay, and before our house flooded, we already had drainage tile on the inside, and that drainage tile stays dry. It's all groundwater runoff. And at what point does it stop? I mean, in 2009, we stood up here, and even the state's attorney stood up here, stating the precedence that was being set was ill-advised. When does it stop? I've flooded twice. If you allow this to happen on that lot, when they decide to build on 3 and 4, we're going to get additional runoff. So, for the first time in 13 years, this road right here was completely underwater. So now there needs to be more culverts put in, and who's responsible for that? The township doesn't acquire this land. I've done the maintenance since I lived there. Okay, so why are we allowing additional buildings when we can't shed the water that's already there?
Okay, that's a good point. Scott, can you, in this particular situation, so there's lots on the east side of that road yet, right? Is this, what's this land in right now? Pasture, hayland,
It's
cornfield?
alfalfa, which also contributed, because I've done the research. When you switch from row crops to alfalfa or a grass type land, you go from an 80% open area to only a 20% open area, so we get additional runoff. And
I recall when you were here before, when the Holbecks were first applying for this. But Scott, who is actually responsible? Is it the county? Is it the developer? Who is it?
For the road,
Drainage? Is that just the,
well, it ends up being a civil matter between the property owners, ultimately.
And so that becomes the next problem, though. You guys approve it, and then it's our checkbooks as the current residents to actually get help.
you have any questions for him?
Mr. Chairman, I have
Yes.
a question for Mr. Holbeck.
Yes.
Sir, considering the issues with your neighbor there, which I also recall him being here talking about this previously, have you taken any steps to blunt the effect of water runoff?
Well, the flooding that Mr. Lee talks about took place before I owned the property. And it was all in a agricultural alfalfa field that I bought, and it's currently in that same state except for where we put a house. The house that shows on this picture is my son's house. We're building right next to him. And I'll get to that answer there. Our shed, if you look at the topography, is all going to be going to the northwest. It's not going to be going to the north down this road. It's not going to impact that. So if it's the precedence that's being set, this one isn't something that's going to impact his property. I did put a berm across lot number 4, I believe it is. I can't read that very well. Right on the south side of his property when he said that he was having trouble with flooding. This is a berm that was put on. It had nothing to do with the fact that we're building on it. It was just everything to do with he was complaining that he was getting water in his basement from before, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll solve this by putting a berm across. After I put the berm across, he asked me to put a culvert in it. So the culvert now goes onto his property. As far as the drainage on the road flooding, that was in the thaw, freeze time of the winter when the culvert froze shut. And I think that happens regularly and a lot of times when this sort of stuff happens. So that's what I can respond to that. I'll take any other questions if you want me to answer any of the other issues.
Any other questions for Mr. Holbeck while he's up there?
I have a question for David again. Sorry.
Yes, okay. Yeah, Mr. Lee, I think.
David, could you show us lot
David
4
Leonard, yes.
on the map there? Okay. I didn't see it over here when I looked. It's bigger over here.
So basically, the drainage on the east side of that road all is gonna go north, basically?
No.
Not on your side, I'm talking, am I kind of turned here?
If I can point, if
Yes,
you don't mind.
yes, go ahead, point that out, please.
Basically, this is the top of the crest of the hill right here. And so things will go that way, or this will go this way. So everything on the east side of this road, yes, these things will drain that way, but this lot will drain this way. This stuff goes this direction. This stuff goes that direction.
All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. Lee, you have anything else? I'll give you one more chance to take the microphone, please, and then we'll have action.
I strongly feel the problem with, and this is an example property, just because the other residents aren't here, but the property owner of this, I know he wants to develop that at some point of the game. Okay? So if you're creating additional watershed that direction, why is that his fault? Okay? So my point is there should be retention ponds put in for this property to help slow this down, not just, I am grateful for the berm. The reason I asked for a culvert to be put in is because then what happened is this was overflowing up here and completely eroding the road away. There's so much watershed that additional action needs to be taken. And when a developer submits a plan to develop an acreage or any area, they should have to account for the adjacent properties that are affected. Currently, if I understand it correctly, the development plan only has to show the watershed of the piece being proposed. It doesn't have to show the adjacent properties. And that's a big omission. Huge. And like I said, while I am grateful of the berm, it needs to be a retaining pond. It has got to slow down the thousands of gallons of water that gets shed this way.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, that's certainly a difficult issue on the drainage. And Scott, does it, relative to our ordinances, though, we just have to deal with drainage on the, whoever's applying, like he said, correct?
That's correct. There is no requirement that that 100% of runoff has to be retained on that subject property. That's not the intent of the zoning ordinance. It's not written that way.
Okay.
Or sorry, subdivision regulations. That would be part of the subdivision regulations.
Okay. Okay, so that will bring us to discussion or action.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it does seem like it always runs downhill, and am I on the low end of this table? And so, Mr. Lee, I certainly remember when you were here before, and the fact is that, you know, nothing is going to stop water from coming down from the top of the hill unless you dig the hill into a hole. You know, the fact that they changed from row crop to alfalfa, wow, that shouldn't affect it that much. I can understand that it might, but I don't see that. I don't know. I would be happy to have my neighbor with a crop of any kind, I think.
Well, it is difficult, but then that's something we may have to deal with in the future. Like I say, if we have a subdivision regulation, maybe that regulation has to look at, just like we do on tiling regulations, you have to look downstream a little ways.
As you know, we just did away with our tiling regulations here in Minnehaha County. And it does seem like the problem that would be more logically solved by a municipality or maybe a township board. I'm not sure it's incumbent on us to solve it at this
Yes,
table.
and I don't know how this particular township goes, but in our township, they do section lines only. So they wouldn't deal with this at all. And probably your township's the same way. Yeah, because they don't want to get involved like Split Rock does out there. Okay, we need a motion for action.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to approve the request of Mr. Holbuck.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second for that motion?
I would second, based on the fact that it seems that this particular project, this time, this location fits, and this drainage is an immediate impact. But I think Mr. Lee does make some good points that drainage has to be considered in any future development. What will that look like, or what will that mean? We'll have to address at that time, I would think. But I would second for this project here tonight.
We have a motion and a second.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a point of order, is that the motion include the conditions as read?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And Mr. Chairman, I guess, you know, do you feel that, and do we feel that this is the kind of thing we need to revise our ordinances on? Because right now we don't really address the idea of storm retention ponds and stuff like that.
No, but this is what happens when you try to develop little towns out in the country without control. But I think it is something we need to evaluate potentially, at least to the next adjacent properties. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval with conditions. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Go to item number 8, David Heinhold again.
David Heinold, Planning Department. Let's bring this up. This item was deferred from the last month's meeting in June. It's a request to exceed 1,200 square feet of accessory building area. It's 9,574. Already going through petitioner. I just go through just a summary of the subject property is located just off of 258th Street. There's an existing subdivision, about 40 to 50 homes there. This property is located just off of Packard Lane and encompasses about 8.22 acres. Just going through the site plan, the petitioner, the building that is in question has been removed from the property. It was a 20 by 30 machine shed, and the request would accommodate, or request to add a 30 by 48 post frame steel building, which would be located right here, outlined for reference. Going through, again, just going through the sizes that are out there, and really quickly, mainly the sizes in the area go from about 1,200 to a maximum of like 3,278. The property, it's on Kiwanis Avenue, as you can see down here, is about the same size as the subject property itself, right here, just to the southwest. So just going through some of the pictures that I took on site. This is that area where that building would be located on the property, the 30 by 48. The existing petitioner's house and garage, or attached garage. This is one of the buildings on the site that's located towards the north of the property, behind the house. This is located along the driveway, a little shed, another little building that's included, and a couple other ones. And these are located at the front, the south of the property, closer to the entrance to Packard Lane, and then going across the street. And then this is looking from Packard Lane towards the property, so you only see the two buildings that are located closer there. The rest are farther back. Just going through some of the sizes in the area. These are along Packard Lane, right next to the subject property. This is located just to the southwest. There's an additional circle lane there. There's a cornfield or farmland that separates the two subdivisions. This is just a subdivision of like half a dozen homes. As a comparison. And this is also in the same subdivision as the one I just showed in that little 6 subdivision grouping. Same one. And so without that, I would ask for any questions if you have them.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, David, so there's numerous sheds and outbuildings on this property, and this is just going to add to the total square footage that they're going to have, right?
Yes, correct.
So how many other buildings do they have?
Oh, the total about 8 or 9 buildings, so including the little sheds. So there's really small ones on the property. So it adds up the entire total of everything.
Thank you.
Any other questions of David? Okay, there's a petitioner here. Thank you. Yeah, state your name and address, please.
Dennis Lighthizer, 25764 Packard Lane.
Okay, you have any questions, Mr. Lighthizer? It basically looks like, when I did the quick math, you're looking for another 1,000 square feet after you tore down the other shed, right?
Yeah, we had the 20 by 30, and we want to go to 30 by 48.
You have questions of Mr. Lighthizer?
Mr. Chairman, so are you going to be, having events on your property, or what are you going to be using this for? I saw
Family things.
a sign that said party house on one of the photos there.
That was because
Party
a month
barn,
ago,
yeah.
when he was taking pictures, we were getting ready for my mother's birthday, and she turned 100 years old, and we had her party there. So
I hope it was
to
a good one.
identify where the people would come.
Okay.
Is this the original farmstead or something?
It's, yeah,
That's the way it looks to me when I look at the
24 years
barn.
ago, I bought the farmstead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Lighthizer? If not, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone in the audience care to address this item? If not, we'll call for action.
Mr. Chairman, since there is no other opposition and it's been there for a while this way, I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, we have a motion. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second to approve. Did we have a lot of conditions on this one as well? I don't believe there, yeah, with conditions. Okay, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And the next item should be number 9. Scott.
Okay, as we forward look at the PowerPoint presentation here. Okay, this is the time for a scheduled public hearing on a planned development rezoning request. This is rezone 1701 to rezone 80 acres, approximately 6 miles west of Sioux Falls, rezoning it from A1 agriculture to the Eagle Ridge Crossing Plan Development. And as you know, the county uses many different kinds of planning techniques, such as zoning density, the use of subdivision regulations and plan developments to accomplish the goals of the comprehensive plan. And the plan says that occasionally conventional zoning districts can be a barrier to innovative design and development techniques, and that's when you call in a plan development that can look at an entire plan in one swoop, basically, and typically a plan development has mixed uses. It may have components of residential, components of agriculture, components of commercial or industrial. And so that's what the beauty of a plan development is. It allows some flexibility in zoning. And typically when you have a plan development, you set up criteria for each district or each sub-area. Typically there are sub-areas within that plan development. And that's what we have here today, is a plan development consisting of 80 acres, several different sub-areas. And I'm gonna go over each of those sub-areas for you and for the audience. So this is first of all, just so everyone's clear where this is at, this is the county highway along the north here. This is the intersection of the Wall Lake Oil. The Wall Lake is basically 1 mile to the north of this. This is 41st Street. To give you an idea, this is the end of 41st Street. The pavement ends right here. At this point over here, this becomes gravel. As you go further south on this, 1 mile south of here is the county line, and then it continues into a Turner County highway. So there's a correction line there, and it goes down to Chancellor in that area. So that gives you an idea where this is at. So let's go over the sub-areas. So as you recall, originally there was a plan that was submitted with the applicant. The applicant had submitted that basically just subdivided this all into residential lots. And I had originally recommended not to approve that. I didn't feel it met the intent of what a plan development was. The applicant and Eric Willitson went back to the drawing board, and they've submitted this. So what we have here are several sub-areas. Sub-area A is what I would call residential lots. Those lots range from 1 acre, basically 1.2 to approximately 1.4 acres in size. And there's 31 residential lots within the 2 sub-areas. So the sub-areas are located on either side of what is sub-area E, and I don't mean to jump around, but sub-area E is basically open space, park. There's a playground that's been called for. There's a pond and a large area of walking trails. That is, I feel, a very good use of that area because it is a floodplain, and we want to encourage development to occur away from that floodplain. So I think there's a benefit to having that as open space for the sub-area A, because it'll give them some buffers from each other It'll provide a beautiful open space for them to walk in. The next area is sub-area B. That is the existing farmstead. There is a farmstead with a nice shelter belt there. They're calling for that to stay ag. And I believe that area was approximately 3.9 acres, just under 4 acres. Sub-area C is the commercial area, and this is an area that's approximately 4 to 5 acres in size. It's located directly at the intersection of County Highway 151 and County Highway 148. And the applicant is showing, depicting 2 commercial buildings. One is a convenience store with a car wash, and the other would be like an office building or some similar use. Both of the structures would not be allowed to exceed 10,000 square feet, and the applicant has not identified any tenants at this time, but prior to any of those uses, a final development plan would have to be approved by the Planning Commission for the ultimate build-out of that sub-area C, the commercial area. And then finally, you have sub-area D, and D is an area that's proposed for multifamily. There are 2 separate parcels separated by the open space, and both of these lots are 4 to 5 acres in size, and each parcel is projected to have a maximum of 16 units, I believe, on each parcel. As I reviewed this, back up. The applicant is proposing to have community septic systems, and those are shown in a drain-filled area, and those type of systems need to be approved by South Dakota DENR. So any septic system would have to go through state approval. As I indicated in my staff report, I'm not really a fan of how the applicant has laid out their proposed residential, the multifamily portion of this. I really think that a better plan would be to back up the multifamily units up against the back of the open space, so they would have a better access. They would, out their backyards, would see the open space, as opposed to these units now are going to be looking out, backing onto this road. That's just a observation. I put that in there. Once again, we were right back to, though, before any construction occurs, a final development plan would be brought back to the Planning Commission for your review and approval. And at that point, we discuss the landscaping, the parking, how the buildings are going to look. So really what we're addressing tonight is just density and use. So that, just to make that clear. And then finally, as I indicated, the sub-area E is the park area, open space, and that's approximately 14 acres, I believe. Yeah, 14 acres. There's a pond, walking trails, a playground, and a small parking lot. And then you can see right here, they have an access that comes off of this road, and this is the playground area. So they have a small playground, parking, and then what I would call a trailhead where these walking trails would go around the pond and the open space. So each sub-area has criteria which govern its development, basically like conditions of approval. And for the brevity of the meeting, I'm not going to read through all those because it's about 5 pages worth of reading, and I think it's going to be redundant. But so just to give you an idea, each sub-area, it talks about the permitted uses, then we talk about accessory uses, the parking regulations, sign regulations, the density, then there are other regulations, and then finally, it talks about a final development plan, at which point the applicant is required to bring in a final development plan for you to review. So it has been reviewed. The County Highway Department reviewed it and has indicated that they would need to have approval for the 2 approaches, actually 3 approaches onto the county highways, and I've discussed that with the engineer. Each sub-area regulations have been listed for your review. I can go over the pictures for you. This is basically the topographic, shows the the existing, the farmstead and the existing shelter belt trees that are here in sub-area B, which is the ag area. So this is back in April when there were no crops, so it'll give you actually a better idea what it looks like, but it's farmland and this shows the creek as it goes onto the property. This is the intermittent stream that comes out is the Wall Lake outflow. So this comes directly, the water's coming out of Wall Lake when it's flowing. So I will be glad to answer any questions. Staff is recommending approval based on the fact that we feel it is it's similar to other developments that we've had in August of 2014. The Planning Commission approved rezoning 80 acres north of Renner. The County Commission approved that to agricultural uses and 16 residential uses and the horse riding arena. And staff feels that the planned development has several components that meet the needs of the community, such as open space, and I feel the multifamily dwellings are actually a very good use as a sub-area, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Questions of Scott?
Mr. Chairman, I think I'll have some a little later.
I will too later.
I'll leave the sub-areas up there. I think that's probably going to be the most
I've
beneficial
got one
for you.
quick question,
Yeah.
Scott. Now, the south edge is right next to Turner County, right? Or is it a mile off?
Mile.
Mile off.
Mile and a half.
Mile and a half off. Are there any CAFOs right on the Turner County line?
No, there's not.
Not that I know
There's
of.
nothing down there. What you have here is, east of here is the Sioux Falls City landfill.
About half a mile.
Although they own just about all that land, I think they're gonna purchase the 80 right adjacent to this as well. Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll have additional questions. Petitioners here, please come forward. State your name and address.
Good evening, Eric Willardson, Lawn Engineering, 902 South Cleveland in Sioux Falls here. Here tonight on behalf of the Aaron family. Members of the family are also here, and I think a couple of them would like to address you. I'd like to thank staff. We've put a lot of hours in on this project. Scott's helped immensely with turning this into what we think is a pretty exciting project and for the county and for this area. And I think it's a great opportunity for economic development. Like Scott has indicated, we have a mix of both commercial, office, multifamily, residential, plus the open space. And the open space, for all intents and purposes, is floodway. It's undevelopable land essentially anyway. But again, as Scott has indicated, with the range of land uses, it seems that it's in conformance or compatible with the comprehensive plan as we've come up with the various uses. We did strike out and tried to invite the neighbors to a neighborhood meeting, and we had that neighborhood meeting. I think it was scheduled for a month or so ago. We sent out invitations to all the adjacent property owners that were on the list for the rezoning, and unfortunately, no one showed up. So we haven't presented it to the neighbors. That was our, I guess, opportunity to do that. As Scott indicated, there are similar developments, I think, that you can look at that utilize this type of a scheme. I think Doug is here tonight, actually lives in one and would like to expose you to that a little bit. I think a lot of this is similar to what he's experienced and where he's living. Again, I understand county highways need to look at both drainage and access to the highways. As Scott indicated, it is at the intersection of two major highways. There is a commercial development 2 miles to the north at the Wall Lake corner and 3 miles to the east at, I believe, Highway 17. But I guess with that, I know there's probably going to be some questions. I'd be happy to answer any that you have. And again, one of the family members of the Aaron farm, and again, this farm has been in the family for over 65 years, so it's their dreams or whatever to try and do something with this land now that it's getting closer and closer to the encroachment of Sioux Falls. And I guess with that, any questions that you have of me right now, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions of the petitioner?
Mr. Chairman, so Eric, who's going to own the pond and stuff? Because my experience is that a lot of times nobody pays taxes on these things, and then I wind up trying to give them away to somebody on the county.
Understand, Mr. Barth. And along with the pond, the open space, and the roadways, because we understand the township wouldn't, or the county, will not want to maintain them. With this plan development district coming in with the final development plan, I think that would require a homeowners association that all of the, at least sub-areas, maybe not the commercial sub-area, but all the rest of the sub-areas would likely be required to be a member of that homeowners association that would be responsible for maintenance of the pond, the park, the walking trails, and the roads in the development. That's typically the way it's been done in the past. I've used that format numerous times.
And I do believe that we would require a road district. What about a car wash on a septic system? That seems like an overflow situation.
If they had a car wash, you know, a convenience store, car wash, fuel station, certainly they would have to have separator systems. You can put a car wash on it, and it may be on a holding tank, maybe a large holding tank. I don't see it being connected to a drain field. I don't think DENR would allow that. So whether a car wash or not is an option, don't know. Engineering's available to design one. You could do it. Whether it's feasible right up front, I don't know, but it's certainly able to be engineered.
Any other questions?
Assume the convenience store may be on a holding tank anyway, and not a septic system.
Any other questions? Otherwise, if not, I have a few. Okay, so what on National Dakota Access Pipelines going right through there? What restrictions do they have relative to building near or putting a road across their pipeline?
Did
'Cause I
speak
know they are
with-
very touchy.
Yep, did speak with a representative, actually, a couple times, and actually today again, just to make sure that they understood what we were doing and they've seen the plan. They are neither opposed to it or in favor of it. The only requirement that they have is at the crossing points that we meet their engineering design standards that are set up with the easement that was granted for the pipeline. The pipeline was buried as a requirement of the Aaron, 6 feet deep through this area. And we would certainly work with Dakota Access to ensure that the roads and the crossings met their design standards. And by easement, their owners are required to.
Okay, so basically what we're doing here is creating a town in rural Minnehaha County. Everybody says this is like things we've done before. No, it isn't.
I
We
don't know
have
that it's
never
necessarily
approved
a
one.
town.
It's a town. You've got fourplexes, you've got commercial. It's a town. You've got over 63 housing units of one type or another. That's a little town. That's bigger than Rowena. That's bigger than
That's
a lot of our little
economic
villages.
impact for the county, at a time when the county seems to be somewhat struggling to meet budget, and this is certainly an opportunity to create economic development.
But it's also an opportunity to increase density significantly, and what we're supposed to be doing is encouraging our small rural communities to grow, and not creating those outside of those small rural communities.
I think you can look around the county and see literally 30, 40 of very similar sized housing units
And how many of them have
housing
fourplexes?
developments
How many of them have fourplexes
in Minnehaha County.
in park areas? I've never seen them. I've seen a lot of them, but a lot of them are old. They've been there, put in the sixties, back in the seventies when they were still doing it, till zoning's changed in 85.
And that's maybe something one of the owners will address, because he lives in one in Iowa that has condos in it, and they're very popular.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Anyone
very
else care to
much.
come and address this, please?
Doug Bacon, 11 Woodland Drive, Humboldt, Iowa, and I'm married to Lori Bacon, and of course Al Aarons is my brother-in-law, and Jan. I've been certified as a spokesman here. As this plan developed, I guess I've been married to Lori for 26 years, and the family has talked about developing this property for years and years. They've felt like with the blacktop on both sides that it had potential. And as we worked through this with Eric, it occurred to me here just recently how similar this is to where I live. I live about 2.5 miles south of Humboldt, Iowa, which is a town of 6,000, and about 15 miles north of Fort Dodge, Iowa, which is a town of 30,000. And our development was set up in the 70s. It originally had 5 owners. It is a homeowners association. We're responsible for all of the expenses. What's interesting is that ours is about 43 acres. There's 20 families currently living there. It is plotted all out, similar to this, that they did back in the 70s. The original 5 owners owned almost all of it until just recently we were able to get shares. It's a corporation. We were able to get the shares to almost all the other owners, those that wanted to buy them, and there's opportunity for those that will in the future. What I thought was really cool as being instrumental in getting that done was the reason that they wanted to buy shares was not to profit, but was to maintain the green area, the golf course. We have a 21-acre 4-hole golf course in amongst our houses, and they wanted to maintain that. They didn't want the 5 owners to turn around and change that green area. There are still some additional lots around the outside. We've had some additional homes being built here in the last few years. So I guess to me it's interesting that something that was started in the 70s, still in 2017, is still something that people desire and that they want. We do have a townhome that has 4 units to it. They're all attached, and it's never sat empty. Lori and I have lived there for 20 years, and it's never sat empty. There's usually, right now there's 3 widows living there and a young couple, and they like the fact that they can go to work, come home, they don't have to mow grass, they don't have to move snow, and yet they still have somewhat of a rural setting. When they look out their back window, they see a cornfield, and they like that. So I guess the quality of life in the rural area is kind of what they like, and they don't want to be in town. They like having some neighbors, but they don't want to be in town. And it just winds up being a good deal all the way around for where we're at, and this is very similar. So
You have a major oil pipeline running through your development?
no, we don't.
Okay, I
And
think
we
that's a
had
major-
wanted to do this long before the pipeline came through. We weren't in favor of that. But
Any other questions as petitioner? Okay, thank you. Anyone else care to address this? Yes. Mr. Lee, state your address again, please.
47563 255th Street. As somebody that's been in front of this board numerous times, this does not fit with what you guys have been preaching to me as a petitioner of businesses in town developments, work with your local municipalities. Your watershed on this, your runoff, this is a disaster waiting to happen. I understand there's engineering things that you can do for it, but this isn't the time or place. You know, the comprehensive plan is to preserve agricultural land. This is not it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience care to address us? Come forward, please state your name and address.
Brian Duffy, 26748 463rd Avenue. Where the subdivision B is, the city owns all that. The landfill does. So you got the RR in the corner. All those will be looking at the dump out of their backyard.
I'm sorry, could you show us what area you mean there, Scott?
Oops.
There you go. That's actually a better picture.
Yeah, that 80-acre parcel right there, the city bought that.
The one immediately to the east, you mean?
That one right there.
Okay.
So the dump land comes up right to the east side of that, and they can pile dirt. They can bring garbage half-mile to the road. They have to have a buffer half-mile from any road to their garbage, but they can stockpile their dirt. I'm not sure how far from the road they can stockpile it, but they can stockpile their dirt pretty close to the road. And creek that runs through there, you're gonna put all that septic system into the pond. Are they gonna be able to play in the pond? Is it gonna be 5 feet deep, 16 feet deep?
No, they would be regular septic systems as any rural household would have.
But that's
And-
31 septic systems,
Yes, plus
Thanks.
more than that.
plus the fourplexes
Plus
and the commercial and that. And then, is there gonna be a 4-way stop sign at that corner? Cause you got trucks that go to Centerville all day long with corn and beans. You got garbage trucks up and down 41st Street all day long and that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else care to address this?
Wayne Prostrello, 26681, 463rd Avenue. When I bought my land kitty corner from there, I was under understanding that we had eligibilities. So I'd never be crowded with people anymore. I moved from Sioux Falls. To have these guys move out here to turn a whole 80 acres into 100 people was not my dream. I don't think they looked into the picture. I don't think they know the water rights out there. All the water from my field, hour and a quarter, to the south of me, to the north of me, all drains through that tile. It all comes in that creek. There's a lot of water that goes through that area. The whole area is a floodplain. I talked to the water department. They haven't been questioning about the amount of water going out there and stuff. They don't have the capability right now to put water out to that big an area.
You're talking about Minnehaha County rural water?
Right. The whole area, once again, is agricultural, and that's why we moved out there, to avoid any problems of people. They should have 1 or 2 eligibilities left to their place. They can put them in. But as for a little town, that's not right to the farmers out there, or to us. Okay?
Any question, Mr. Preston?
Wayne, where's your home at on this map? Is it just kitty corner to the northwest?
The northwest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else care to address this issue? Okay, please come forward, state your name and address.
Thomas Dossett, 26753 463rd Avenue. I'm just on the west side of the road, half mile south. And I lived in a development before over on Country Lane. That was one of those built in the 70s before the commission had anything much to say about what was going on, before the housing eligibilities were put into place. When I bought that property, there was 4 houses on the back road. It seemed like living in the country. But as it grew and grew, I wanted to get out of there, get away from the development. So 6 years ago, I purchased that property there, talked to all the neighbors, found out how many housing eligibilities there were. I figured I had it set, they could build maybe 2 to 3 houses around that area. And now they're planning this. And that's not why I moved there. I could just as well move back to Country Lane if I'm gonna have to live that close to development. And I thought the housing eligibilities would protect people when they buy property to keep that from happening. And I thought I was secure when I moved there.
It can, however, if a landowner, I can think of a landowner north there who has probably 20 housing eligibilities, and if all his land was adjacent, he could basically make one development out of those 20 eligibilities.
Yep, but what do they have there?
They have 2.
Yeah, put 2 houses there.
Anyone else care to address this issue? Come forward, state your name and address, please.
Jeff Wilson, 26745 463rd Avenue. I'm south of I'm neighbors with Tom, to the north of Tom. I just would like to address the precedence this is gonna set. Is all the other, there other gonna be, other landowners gonna requesting the same thing? And the lighting from this mini mall, or whatever it's gonna be, is it gonna be just like a big truck stop down there, you know? And the quality of life. Mr. Bacon made that point. We moved out there for quality of life. We didn't foresee this. We've been living out there for 25 years. And if we wanted to live close to people, we'd move back into Sioux Falls. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else care to address this? Otherwise, we'll close the floor for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Scott a question.
Yes.
Scott, so procedurally, this will go to the county commission whichever way we decide, is that right? In as much as that it's a
That's correct.
rezoning?
As the chairman read, the final action, or the county commission automatically will have a hearing on this. That hearing will occur on the 22nd of August at 9 a.m. So regardless of, let me rephrase that. I will take your recommendation forward to the county commission at that hearing on the 22nd of August. It's a public hearing. It's advertised in the official papers of the county, and it is a public hearing, and then we will all go through this process again. And there'll be a public hearing in front of the county commission, so.
So whether we approve it or disapprove it, let me say, in talking to the other commissioners, that they do read our minutes. Oftentimes, there is additional information that comes to us that wasn't in this hearing, so to speak, but we do read it.
And my responsibility is to facilitate that meeting. I set up the hearing notice. Whatever decision you make, that's the decision I present to the planning commission. And I no longer will be presenting my staff report or what my thoughts are. I will be presenting your recommendation to the county commission.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Okay, so let's hear from each commissioner on this one, since this is a pretty important issue. We've had these before. The last one of these we had, wasn't that long ago. And at that time, precedence was brought up here tonight, and I went to that county commission meeting when precedence was brought up, and the commission asked a lawyer in the audience what he thought about precedence. He says, oh, it doesn't apply. And of course, I think precedent depends upon which side of the fence you're sitting on. But this is something different, like I say, because basically this land right now has 2 housing eligibilities. And I know Eric likes to say it's encroaching on Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls isn't gonna get out there for 30 years. They gotta get past the landfill and a couple other housing developments first. And as I look at this, like I said, I guess it's my turn to talk. But I look at it this way, okay, it's still the creation of a town out in the rural area with no sanitary sewer district. It's, like I say, it just is not appropriate land use. It's supposed to be about density zoning. And if this, in putting 63 housing units on 80 acres is not density, I don't know what is. And there's no, like I say, there's no, they're all gonna be on regular septic systems. I don't worry about the drainage as Mr. Lee comes, because I go by, I know where this is. That's a Wall Lake outlet. It basically flows to the middle of June, then it dries up unless we get heavy rain, is basically the way it works. And unless you get 14 inches of rain like we had that one year down that area, and then it really flows. But I would say, as I look at this, you talk about precedents, there's, like I say, commercial on the corner of a county highway, we've done that many times. You really, that part of it is probably the one part of it that is consistent with what we've done in the past. In looking at our Envision 2035 plan, that would be a spot. But as I look at this, this is creation of a town. That's all there is to it. I mean, if you had 3 people, the man stepped up and said there'll be 100 people living there. No, there'll be more like 200 people living there, if it's all full. Plus additional activities. And I just don't think that's appropriate. So let's poll. Bonnie, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to support what you said about this being basically a small town in rural America here, but it's actually in rural Minnehaha County. My huge concern is the number of units we've got here, folks. These are a lot of units here. I don't know how you're thinking in an ag community, but this is going to could create some huge problems. And like I said, I pretty much back what you're saying about this looking like a small town. Especially with the different, you know, you've got single family, you've got multifamily, you've got fourplexes. I mean, they're basically trying to build a town here on, 2 eligibilities here. And I guess I just don't agree with that.
Mr. Odie, what are your thoughts?
I would agree with what both you and Bonnie have said. There are 2 building eligibilities on the 80. The only thing I'd like the people that are opposed to this, Turner County's 1.5 miles away. You moved out into the country to get away from a lot of people. What if there was a CAFO that went up in Turner County? Would we be hearing a different side then? That's my big thing. I totally agree with what Mike and Bonnie have stated so far, but yeah, I don't like it. It's a town out in the middle of the country. You know, certain times of the year, I'm sure the dump will give off some odors. How is that going to be received by this community? So as of right now, I cannot support this.
Becky, what are your thoughts?
I echo what you folks have said, and I don't think I have too much else to add to it. My biggest concern probably is all of these septic systems in a confined area, and it's got to be a really big septic system to accommodate these fourplexes, and I'm sure it can be designed, but that is a concern for me.
Mike, your thoughts?
I guess I too would echo my concern for the density here. It's no secret my professional background is in construction, but even with that said, I think that this is far too dense of a area for this particular application. So I would vote against it.
Okay, Mr. Cosbooth, your thoughts?
Yeah, I appreciate the background that you guys have given. When I first looked at it, my concern initially was the same as everybody else's. Density. Wow, that's dense. And how does it fit? How does it work? I'm sure there's ways for it to be done, but that was my number one thing is, does this work here in that location? It's a lot of people trying to put out there as it stands today.
Okay, Commissioner Barth, you have any further thoughts?
Well, let me just say that the French philosopher Sartre said, hell is other people. And it sometimes gets difficult when we're all crowded together. But I'm thinking that if we're going to hear this on the county commission level, rather than express an opinion right now, I'll just not show up at that meeting. But I do think that it's not right yet. I think that it's not impossible to persuade me, but I'm not persuaded by what we've got. And think about the school district, think about traffic, think about the opportunities for agriculture being limited by objectors in this area. Think about being opposed to windmills. When we add people, then we add additional feedback on all these kinds of issues. And so I'm waiting to hear what my fellows will make a motion here.
Okay, thank you. Any other commission want any additional comments? If not, we'll call for action.
I move denial of conditional use permit number 17-40. Whoops, I'm sorry, wrong page. Conditional use permit 17-01 for rezoning.
Okay, do we have a second to the
I'll
motion?
second it.
We have a motion and a second to deny. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Denial is what carries. Okay, we go to old business, right? Okay,
Mr. Chairman, we still do have that Del Rapids issue, and I'd like to talk about that.
oh, yes, Del Rapids not being here.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have they stood us up on this kind of stuff? It's got to be like 5 out of 6. Is there a way that we could unilaterally make a decision based on our half of the decision?
No, you cannot. You have to meet jointly together. Two bodies meeting together.
That's what the ordinance calls for, correct?
I think that's one of the reasons why when Crooks was talking about doing that with us, that I was resistant, because sometimes even the Sioux Falls guys have trouble getting a quorum here.
Yes.
Scott, do you have communication with them, like Del Rapids, to know if anybody's coming, or is there any liaison between us and them?
We do a
Or
lot of hand-holding, and we
Okay.
contact Justin Wyland, we tell them that we need a meeting. We just ran into this a month ago with a vacation of a street right away in the joint area. It didn't involve you. We couldn't get the county, we couldn't get the city commissioners and mayors down here. So it's not only, I will say, it's not only a Del Rapids Planning Commission issue, it's a citywide Del Rapids issue.
Okay. All right. Yes.
So do we want to try to look at withdrawing from that joint? I mean, is that something we should talk about? With,
You
Yeah.
can, you would need to make, well, you would hold, you would make a recommendation, I'd have to look into it, you'd make a recommendation to the county commission, we'd go through a hearing process to dissolve the joint zoning district, the joint zoning controls that you have. I can't see that happening, other than you're gonna draw attention to their truancy.
Truancy. Yes, that's basically what it is. It's truancy. They're not.
Seems terribly unfair to have petitioners go through the process and do what they're supposed to do.
Was the
and-
petitioner here this evening?
Here, yeah, he's right
Well, there
here.
you are.
Petitioner.
And I apologize, but,
Well, it's nothing you can do.
You can just
Can't force them
we
down
just
here.
look bad.
Yeah.
We get the heat, we get all the punishment, we don't get,
Yes.
that's it.
I tell you,
Petitioner right here. Go ahead.
Yes.
please
Darrell
address
Lindner,
us.
909 Tracy Drive, Brandon, South Dakota. I'm petitioning on the Del Rapids. We're looking at putting a storage shed up on a piece of property over there. I guess one of my concerns would be is, what do I do now? Do I gotta go through all the petition states again? I gotta send out all of the certified letters?
Okay, well, that's the question for staff to answer.
I mean, to be on the August, because I've already went through, signed them all out. I had 2 people contact, I guess one contacted here to find out what we're using the building for. And then another stopped down to the property owner to find out what they were doing and everything. But everybody around this property has buildings comparative to the building we're looking to build.
Yeah, we'll have
So,
to send out, you don't send them out by certified mail, just regular mail, but we will have to have you send them out again with the new date.
So with the extra expense and stuff like that
So
again?
I would talk to Mr. Weiland at Del Rapids.
I don't agree with that either.
Express your concern about what happened.
Okay. If the board could help us out anyway, I'd appreciate it too.
Okay.
We'll do what we
But
can.
now you're
Thank you.
ready to sit up here because you know what goes on here.
I won't be so nervous next time. Thanks, guys and gals, I appreciate
All
it.
right, thank you.
That's terrible.
Well, our legal counsel has advised me that you can recess and we can try and round up quorum, members from Del Rapids if you so desire.
But
Like
do
on
we
the
have
phone or-
anybody from Del Rapids here?
Well, you would need to, we'd have to get them on, I don't know how you would get them on the phone, but you could recess, we could wait an hour while they come.
Could they meet us at Wiley's?
And the tabs on.
Might have a full room again.
It'd be closer if we met them at that bar by Baltic.
Is there some way we could do a teleconference with them?
You could, but I don't have.
Now we could get it tonight.
You know,
Not tonight, we
that's
won't.
what we
We won't be
should
able to
try
do
to
it
set up some alternative,
They would let us know.
you know, conference call or something that where, you know, even if they had two in attendance and a couple that weren't,
Yeah, I just got a quick question, Scott. I mean, they've been doing this for several months, you know, we don't. Is there a possibility you could say if you don't show up, you're getting a fine? No?
Could you ask Mr. Weiland if he potentially could set up a conference call if they aren't
Yeah.
gonna be here? If they wanna just meet in Dell's and we'll do it.
I could do that. I could do that, you know. I can do that if that's what they want.
You shouldn't have to.
No, you
No.
shouldn't have to,
But-
I agree.
If they would just, yeah. Are we, yeah. It's one of those things that if they won't call to tell us they're not showing up, are they going to,
Call it all.
are they gonna stand you up on a telephone call? I mean, that's really where you are.
Yes.
it's an alternative to where we're at now and to where our poor applicant is at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, drives down, spends the whole night with us.
That's right.
As much as he clearly enjoyed it. We do this once a month. You can come every time.
I do find it very interesting.
Well, I apologize, but we'll have to.
Yeah,
it'll
we'll
be
have
on
to
the
wait.
next
It's not your
month's
fault,
meeting.
Scott.
Not your
And I
fault.
would suggest that you, as the petitioner, contact the city of Del Rapids and give them some help.
Should
Will we be reimbursed?
Del Rapids comes, we won't show up.
We're not gonna be here anyway.
I don't have any
Him
other
and I are
ideas.
gonna be.
Okay, no other old business? David, you have anything? Okay, Kevin, you're good?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say again that on August 8th, the county commission will be looking at our planning ordinance revisions that we've been working on for the last 8 months. And I would urge my fellow county planning commissioners to contact one or more regular commissioners to help bring them up to speed on this.
Or attend the meeting.
Or plan on coming August 8th.
And that's a good point. The commission, when we set the hearing date, the commission asked, that we try to reach out to people. I suggested that we contact, every single township supervisor. So we sent out, Kevin sent out about 60 notices to every single township supervisor. I think there were 12 news media outlets, which included all the small town newspapers, radio stations, television stations, to try and get the word out, so.
Argus Leader's already been doing interviews.
Yeah, I think you will be seeing a story from the Argus Leader, so.
Good.
Yeah.
Good job.
Must be good.
Bring up?
Yep.
If not, we'll move for adjournment.
Move adjournment.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Saying next time, Bonnie and I are not gonna be here, so you decide who's gonna lead the